So good evening. I thought I'm gonna check in here real quick with you guys and give you a short recap on the trip. There was a couple things I said in the 2 or 3 videos I posted, which I wanted to add a few things. Let's start with the difference between the trip in 1997, so 25 years ago, and this one. 1997 was the 420 SEL I had, which had about 40,000 miles on it back then, maybe 50, somewhere in between there. And this trip now with this car, what the differences were. Well, for one is the speed limit in 1997 on I-35 was 65 mile an hour. Now it has been raised to 75 mile an hour. That, of course, causes some differences because you're going to have a higher gas consumption there, and I get to that in a minute. The other thing is that the speed limit increase is also pertaining to trucks. So now you have trucks driving at 75 mile an hour. That is quite different than what we had before. And the other thing is the gasoline, if I remember that correctly, back in 1997, for premium was $1.02. Here in Kansas, at least it was Missouri, Kansas. Regular was 92. The mid-grade was 97. There was always 5 cents difference between them. So $1.02. That was one of the big differences, which I've noticed. Also, the increased traffic for both trucks and regular vehicles on the road. I would say, you see, when you drive south from on I-35 from Kansas City to Emporia, Kansas, and you get onto the turnpike, the turnpike goes from Topeka, Kansas, basically all the way down to Wichita. That's a toll road. Oh yeah, that's another thing, is what has also increased. For that stretch from Emporia, Kansas to Wichita, which is, I think, around 100 miles or something like this, they charged me $9.50. It goes by axles, not by gross weight. So that is quite expensive. I think that was maybe $2 or $3 back then for a car. Now it's at $9.50. That's the state of Kansas. The turnpike is in a pretty decent shape, and so you get there, and then I think the turnpike stops shortly after Wichita before you get to the Oklahoma border. So that's the big differences. The traffic has definitely increased. On this drive now here, it was pretty windy. I think we had 25-mile-an-hour winds. They were probably gusting up to 35, 50 mile an hour. And that is quite an experience when you're driving. I haven't driven a long distance myself in this car now at 75 mile an hour. The other thing is, I also have to say, is people obey the speed limit. You will have now everyone going more or less somewhere between 73 miles and 77 miles. So you have suddenly trucks for all your international views. 75 mile an hour is approximately right around 120 kilometers an hour. That may not sound fast, but for trucks, 18-wheelers, which are much larger than the European trucks they have in Europe, it is quite a speed. So to have 2 trucks coming, or I had trucks actually passing me, I put the cruise control in at 75 mile an hour. That is quite an experience. To the gas mileage, I usually drive to half a tank, and then I go and stop, and I put it into my app. I have Gas Buddy app. And we averaged, the actual average came out, the total trip from door here, from home, back doing everything what I did back here, 732 miles. That's 1,178 kilometers. 1,178 kilometers. I used 53.86 gallons of premium. With that 10 gallon I had in there approximately of 87. So most of that 87 stuff is gone. All of it, I was lucky I was not getting non-ethanol fuel. Average fuel price about $4 a gallon. So you figure I spent about 220 bucks in gas for this trip, for this round trip, and we averaged out 13.6 miles per gallon. And that is when you convert this 17.25 liters per 100 kilometers. And I had a stretch where there was less wind and I didn't pass the trucks. What I did wind up doing is when I was passing trucks, because they were basically going at the same speed, I had the cruise control set to 75. I would go on a left lane and then speed up to 80 and then pass the truck and go in front of it. And Gas Buddy, who keeps track of this to evaluate your driving, noted every time I did this, I got a mark speed limit in my app there. It's crazy, but that's basically what I did. So when there were Sunday coming back, when there were very little trucks in that stretch between Stillwater, Oklahoma to Wichita, there was very little traffic. I actually got the best gas mileage on that segment because I filled up then in Wichita, between Oklahoma and Wichita, and I actually came out to 17.4 miles a gallon. So it really depends on how often you do this, that you speed up and slow down and speed up and you slow down, and how much headwinds you have or gusting winds. That plays a big part in this too. The worst gas mileage segment I had was at 12.4 miles per gallon. This was when I was coming in Friday afternoon on that last stretch from Blackwell, Oklahoma, where we got gas, until I got to the hotel. And the reason for this was to stop and go traffic. I figured I would get into the Oklahoma City rush hour at 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, especially on a Friday, and sure enough, and it was then bumper to bumper, and we had to stop and go, you speed up, you stop it, because there's so many highways, the Tulsa highways, east-west highways merging there with I-35, so you have east-west and north-southbound traffic to Texas and Kansas City, basically on the main routes. And to a certain extent, the people who go up to Denver, Colorado, they go up on the Kansas Turnpike on I-35, and then they turn west on I-70 when they hit I-70 here. So, but this is pretty good because we're in the roughly in the range where we needed to be. I would say, yeah, we averaged out about 13.6 miles per gallon. It probably would be more like 15 gallons or 16 gallons if you would do 60 or 65 miles an hour, because the stickers they used to have in the cars at the dealerships, they would say it gets you 14 or 15, 12 to 14 miles in the city and 15 to 17 on the highway. Well, that was based on 60 or 65 miles without speeding up and slowing down, speeding up and slowing down. And on one stretch for a short moment, I went up to 85 miles an hour, and that went okay. The steering is fine, you know. The roads are not really made for these speeds here. This is about 130, 135 kilometers an hour, and you can feel it from all the heavy trucks in there. The hefties, it goes like this. You're going like it's really strange. Depends on what segment it is where you're driving and how heavy the truck was and when they had maintained the roads. We have quite some potholes in there. So I would say probably 180 miles is probably the most you would try to do on these highways here to begin with. 75 is better than 65. I guess they could probably, if they wanted to raise it to 85, I don't think that would make a big difference, but probably any higher than that would be not good. And so this is kind of the big differences here. this is what I really noticed was the traffic was just, I would say 4 times as much. I mean, I've driven down on I-35 quite a few times. I had a customer down in Coffeyville, Kansas, Dixon Lawnmowers. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar in America here. If you got a larger yard at your house or property, you probably have heard of Dixon Lawnmowers. They're no longer there. They were bought up by another company. The people who are making the measuring tapes, I forgot their name now, and they closed that facility down because they shifted the production over to, you know, other places far away, and they're shipping now the lawnmowers, the Dixon lawnmowers, in by container. Anyway, so I had driven down there quite a few times, and it was during those years in the 90s, you had a few people driving down there, and then now and then a truck. And now it was Friday, it was one truck after another, 18-wheelers. Because Kansas City has become one of the main railroad hubs for all the container traffic, they built a huge railroad yard by Olathe, Kansas, that is southwestern Kansas City, that corner, on the outskirts, about 35-40 miles outside from downtown Kansas City. And it is massive, and all the American companies who produce in China have their central distribution warehouses there. It's Walmart, Amazon, Kohler. I mean, every other American name you got there who has anything to do from building materials to whatever. Everyone is there, and they got massive warehouses there. We're just getting a new warehouse out here, just a few miles from where I live. 3 million square feet facility for Urban Outfitters. And they're unloading the railroads. Kansas City used to be the railroad hub for cattle. The cattle to Chicago, to New York, East Coast, to Los Angeles. They would do the cattle track up here, and then in the bottoms they would collect them, and you had the mercantile exchange, the cattle auctions down there, and they would go on the railroad and they were shipped out as livestock. The livestock auctions, that was Kansas City all about. When that livestock stuff went away, the bottoms died out, and then so now they came up with this thing. Is so they have these, we have like 28 foreign trade zones here in Kansas City with the railroad, and they bring these containers and they unload them, and then they go by truck everywhere. And these trains are massive, and you could see the difference. I mean, the truck traffic has literally exploded here. And this is a very uncomfortable thing, is I don't like passing trucks. It is primarily because they're driving so much and their tires are so worn out that if the tires blow out, and you don't really want a tire to blow out at 75 miles an hour next to you. Well, anyway, the trip itself, I was really happy with going down to Oklahoma City. It was nice. The people were very nice, so I have to say thank you to everyone down there. I had a good time, and everything was pretty neat. And I think I'm going to do this again. But I wanted to run by these things for you guys so you have an idea. Okay? You have a good night.